I'm still confident in it. I think there is a downtrend right now because the torch isn't being passed from, Waugh to Brodeur to Luongo. The top tier names aren't there, but I still think there's some young guys that are pushing through. It depends on what organization they're playing for. And let's not forget, Aiden Hill won a Stanley Cup last year. He's a Canadian kid, Alberta boy. So I still believe that there's some quality goaltending, but we have seen a trend, and it is a downtrend right now, a little bit of a cycle. I'm not sure where you're at, but what do you feel about it?
Well, it's not just Aiden Hill, Noodles, that has won a cup in the last year. It was Darcy Kemper. Before that, it was Jordan Binnington with the St. Louis Blues, Braden Helby, Matt Murray twice, Corey Crawford. So you look at the last 9 Stanley Cup winners, 7 of those had a Canadian goaltender in the crease when they won the cup. Now, Matt Murray won it back-to-back, so 6 goalies in 7 cups in 9 years. Andrei Vasilevsky, the only non-Canadian goaltender to have won a cup as a starting netminder in the last 9 years. So they're still there. Here's my issue with where Canadian goaltenders are at now. It used to be where you develop your goaltenders in Major, Junior, and the OHL, Quebec Major Junior Hockey League, the Western Hockey League. But now, the development path of the Canadian juniors doesn't allow enough time for goalies to really mature, to really get the experience that you want. So you get drafted, you have 2 years. If you don't sign, you're washed up. If you're 20 years old, you're in the American League. If you're not ready to take on professional hockey, you're done.
Oh, the player is robbed at the other end by Hill.
We always talk about if you had one guy to win a game with, is it going to be one of these Canadian goaltenders that you mentioned, the Kempers, the Binningtons, guys like that, Matt Murray? Or is it going to be Shesterkin, Vasilevsky, top tier, Demko, Hellebuck? So that's where the challenge is right now when you're talking about winning as opposed to elite top talent. And that's where I think there is that argument, or at least a healthy debate, where are these goaltenders good enough? And I'll throw a guy like Stuart Skinner, who's developing, drafted by the Edmonton Oilers. We see him turning a corner recently, obviously, with the Edmonton Oilers playing well in front of him. But the challenge is, are these guys going to be the top tier when it's best on best? Right now, Canadian goaltending, I would argue, is probably 5th or 6th on the depth chart when it comes to the countries that you're challenging. It's Russia, Finland, Czech Republic, Sweden, even Germany's got good goaltending. So I think that's where people are pointing to and saying we are in a downtrend.
It used to be, well, Carey Price is going to be your number 1 goaltender, or Marty Brodeur, or Roberto Luongo, and then whenever you went to the World Championship, there was always somebody that stood out that was, well, they're all set. They've got the best goaltender in the tournament. Right now, I'm thinking a year ago, I would have answered Darcy Kemper, maybe Matt Murray. I don't know. I would have ventured a guess. Now I'm saying probably Aiden Hill. Look, he won the cup with the Vegas Golden Knights, and he had a pretty good start to the season this year. So I'm thinking, okay, maybe it's Aiden Hill.
In their 6th National Hockey League season, the Vegas Golden Knights have won the Stanley Cup.
You can name Binnington because he won, so they at least have the cachet behind him. Darcy Kemper, if he's playing well in Washington's a playoff team, which they're pushing up against it. These are guys that have the experience on the biggest stage, winning a Stanley Cup. So all you need is one guy to be playing well at the right time, and you believe in it. I think the biggest challenge is do you believe they're going to be able to do it at the most critical time? And would you argue whoever they're facing, whether it's the USA or it's Russia or Czech Republic or Finland, is the other guy in the other net the favorite, just based on the cachet or what they bring to the table?
Back in my days, all the goalies came from Quebec. Why? Because we had François Allaire and Benoit Allaire. It was so rare to have that type of goaltender coaching for the youngster, and we all went there. All the goalies from Quebec went to their hockey school. Well, now goalie coaching is worldwide. It's not just a niche that you have in a province or in a city. So I think maybe we've lost a little bit of our edge in Canada because we used to have that aspect of the game that was so different. Now it's everywhere in the U.S., in Sweden, and Switzerland, as you pointed out, in many countries. So I think we've lost our edge a little bit because of the coaching being so good all over the world.
Continuing the conversation, I'm joined by longtime NHL goaltender Kevin Weeks and TSN's Director of Scouting Craig Button here in studio. Marty just said it perfectly. Canada has lost its edge between the pipes. Kevin, How far off are Canadians from other countries like the U.S. and Russia in terms of goaltending overall?
Well, if I have to grade it on a percentage, I'd say it's probably north of 25%. Gone are the days when we had the dominance at the position, be it the greats like Grant Fuhr, Ed Belfour, Roberto Luongo, Patrick Roy, Marty Brodeur. I can go on and on. There was Cujo. There were so many of them, Mike Vernon to mention. But at this point, we've seen a dip in the marketplace from the position within the borders in Canada. It's just been one of those cycles. And consequently, we've seen the uptick in Finland, here in the U.S., in Sweden, and in Russia. So it is a downturn for us in the net right now.
Yeah, Kevin, I've watched some minor hockey, and I watch 8, 9, and 10-year-old kids, at the rink. And what I see, and it really concerns me, is they're being taught technically before they've been able to develop their athleticism and their understanding of the position. And so you have kids now that don't even really understand the technical aspects, nor should they be asked to, that are being coached that way. Kevin, I watched you in junior hockey. You were a great athlete. You were able to develop that athleticism. And then as you understood the position, then you got the technical part. I think we reversed that in Canada. I see too much of that. And now I see goaltenders from a very young age. They are playing a technical game instead of understanding what to read and how to develop their athleticism. And I think that's been a big problem with the downfall in Canadian goaltending.
From Gretzky to Crosby, McDavid, there's been no drop-off with the top-tier forwards. Same on the back end with Cale Makar, the premium player at the position, like other legends before him. But Craig, what happened to cause such a drastic drop-off with goaltending from previous eras that included Patrick Roy, Dryden, and others?
Well, I just expressed some of it.
Apart from the young kids coming up.
Well, yeah, but what's happened is the overcoaching. Overcoaching at a young age with these kids. Kevin mentioned Ed Belfour and Curtis Joseph. They were free agents. Yeah. Patrick Roy was a third-round draft pick. Henrik Lundqvist was a seventh-round draft pick. They were allowed to develop their games and do it without the spotlight. I watch kids now, and I see it in junior hockey. I see it in U16, U14. And what you see is kids getting into a position because they've been told, get into this position. Right. They don't even know why they're in the position. And I think that's a huge problem. And I also think the cost has become an issue, too. And also, Kevin, you know this. We've seen it happen. The emphasis on size. Big goaltenders. If you're 10 years old, 11 years old, and you're starting out, how do you know how big you're going to be? And you're kind of being precluded. It's like if you're 5'8" and you want to play basketball, you're probably going to not think you got a chance at basketball if you're 5'8" in grade 10.
Some great points there. I couldn't agree more. It's become so robotic. To your point, I couldn't agree more. It's very robotic and very formulaic. And one of the interesting things is growing up, and certainly for a lot of the goalies that I mentioned, but there are so many others, be it Jose Theodore had a great career. Of course, the great Flower, Marc-Andre Fleury, that we saw just eclipse Patrick Roy with 552 career wins. So many of those goalies that I alluded to and referenced, there was an instinct to their game. They were instinctual in how they played. They were able to read and react to the position. And quite frankly, as C. Butt said, many of those guys, once they got older, then they were able to implement technique. But when you watched all of those goalies play, they all did it differently, and they all did it brilliantly, I might add, where now it's a lot of prepackaged kind of within a formula that you have to play. And that really boxes and kind of confines goalies from the standpoint of not being able to read and react, not being able to develop their own individual style of play, and they end up becoming conformists. So I think they have that part of it backwards. And the last thing I'd say for a lot of the young girls and boys at home, and Seabuts, you had this in Dallas, you've had it in different places, where you've been able to see how good of a skater Ed Belfour was or Marty Turco was, among others, that you had. Skating is the name of the game. I would not be here today if it were not for my original coach, who was from Manitoba, the late, great Keith Armstrong that we had with the Toronto Red Wings. His whole thing was predicated on skating. And everything that Mike Pekka and a lot of the other players in our group did, I had to do in goalie pads, on skates, and I wouldn't be here today without it. It's such an element, a key element, and a foundational point of goaltending, being a great skater.
Well, and you talk about, again, developing skating. That's athleticism. And think about this, Kevin, and you played against him, and you know that, and I know what a terrific athlete you were and how you developed your game. What would happen today if Dominik Hasek came in and the goaltending coaches got a hold of him? They would have discouraged him from ever playing, and we're talking about one of the greatest ever.
All right, we're almost out of time, but here's what I want to do. Let's imagine for a second there was a best-on-best tournament right now, and Canada was in the gold medal game tonight. Kevin, let's start with you. Who would you pick in net to start for Canada?
I would go with Binner tonight.
Okay, that's good. I'm going to look to the sky, too. And you know what I'm going to say? I might consider playing 6 skaters because I don't know who I'd start.
Ouch. Ouch. That means we've fallen a long way. By the way, FanDuel has the Vezina odds available right now. Of the top 10 contenders, only 3 are from Canada. Cam Talbot of the Kings, Aiden Hill of the Golden Knights, and Connor Ingram of the Coyotes. Oh, how times have changed.